The ship groaned as it tore through the clouds of an unknown world. Sparks flew from broken panels, alarms screamed inside the small cabin, and smoke filled the narrow space. Ryan gripped the controls with both hands, his eyes locked on the glowing surface below. He had flown through storms before, but never like this. The sky twisted in strange colors, green lightning split the heavens, and every system in his vessel blinked red. He whispered to himself to stay calm. The fuel was gone, the navigation system was broken, and the engines were failing one by one. Escape was no longer possible. He had only one choice left: land. The ship struck the ground hard. Metal screeched as it slid across a field of tall silver grass. The front cracked open, throwing Ryan forward. He gasped as the harness cut into his chest, but he was alive. When the ship finally stopped, silence spread around him. The alarms died. Only the faint hiss of smoke and the sound of his own breathing filled the air. Ryan forced the hatch open and stumbled outside. Fresh air rushed into his lungs, cool and heavy with the scent of wild plants. The sky above was whiter than anything he had seen before, painted with two suns slowly dipping toward the horizon. The field stretched endlessly, glowing softly under the light. For a moment, he forgot his pain and stared at the beauty around him. But he knew this was no paradise. His ship was ruined, tools scattered, and his supplies almost gone. This world was now his prison, and he had no idea if it was safe. He walked a few steps away from the wreckage, scanning the land. Strange trees with twisting trunks stood in the distance, their leaves sharp like blades. He saw birds or things that looked like birds circling high above. Their wings glimmered in the fading light, and their cries echoed across the plain. He felt like a stranger who had stepped into another age, a place untouched by time. Night came quickly. The two suns sank, and shadows swallowed the field. The temperature dropped, and Ryan shivered. He returned to the broken ship, dragging out what little he had: a small pack, a damaged scanner, and a half-empty water flask. He lit a small fire using scraps of wiring and broken panels. The flames flickered weakly, but they kept the darkness away. As he sat near the fire, memories washed over him. He thought of the colony he left behind, of the faces of people who might never know what became of him. He thought of Earth, the home that humans had lost long ago. And now, here he was alone on a world with no map, no allies, and no way to call for help. Sleep came lightly, broken by strange noises in the night. At times he heard rustling in the grass, low growls in the distance, and once, the sound of footsteps too heavy to belong to an animal. Each time, he gripped a sharp piece of metal he had taken from the ship, ready to defend himself. When morning arrived, he rose with sore muscles and a dry throat. He knew he could not stay by the wreck forever. He needed water, food, and shelter. Slinging the pack over his shoulder, he began walking toward the forest of twisted trees. The path was not easy. The grass cut his boots, and insects with shining shells buzzed around him. The deeper he went, the stranger the world became. Vines crawled across the ground, pulsing faintly as if alive. Bright flowers opened and closed as he passed, releasing sweet but dizzying scents. He felt as if the entire forest was watching him. Then he heard voices. They were faint at first, drifting through the trees, but they grew clearer with every step. It was not the sound of animals, it was speech. Ryan froze, his heart pounding. He had prepared himself for the idea of dangerous beasts, but not for this. After all his years in space, he had landed on a world not empty, but inhabited. He crouched behind a thick tree and peered through the branches. In a clearing ahead, figures moved together. They were tall, their skin painted in patterns of deep red and black, and their eyes shone like amber stones. They carried long spears made of bone and metal, and their movements were graceful, practiced, almost ritual. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. An entire tribe lived here. The figures gathered around a fire in the center of the clearing. Their voices rose in strange chants, their hands lifted as if in prayer. From their expressions and the way they looked at the flames, Ryan sensed both hunger and longing. They seemed strong but weary, as though something important had been missing from their lives for a long time. Suddenly, one of them turned and spotted him. Ryan's heart stopped. The chanting broke. Dozens of eyes locked onto his hiding place. Before he could run, they moved with shocking speed. Spears pointed at his chest, voices shouted, and hands pulled him forward into the clearing. The tribe surrounded him, their eyes wide with disbelief. Some whispered words he could not understand, others hissed with suspicion. They touched his face, his clothes, and his hands, as if to make sure he was real. Ryan felt the weight of their stares, and he realized something he had not expected. These people had not seen a human for a very long time. One elder, marked with lines of white across the forehead, stepped closer. The voice was firm, heavy with authority. Ryan could not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. They were asking what he was. He swallowed hard, raised his hands slowly, and said in a calm voice, "I am Ryan. I mean no harm." The tribe murmured among themselves. Some looked fearful, others curious, but a few looked at him with a hunger that chilled his blood. He did not know it yet, but this tribe had lived 105 years without ever seeing a man, and to them, his sudden appearance was not only a mystery, it was also a temptation. The fire crackled, the tribe closed in, and Ryan understood one thing clearly. His arrival had changed everything, and survival would now depend on more than just his strength. The tribe closed around Ryan like a tightening circle. Spears gleamed in the morning light, and every pair of amber eyes studied him as if he were both a wonder and a threat. The elder with white lines across the forehead raised one hand, and the others lowered their weapons slightly, but the air was still heavy with suspicion. Ryan stood still, his palms open, trying to show he meant no harm. His heart raced, but he forced himself to remain calm. Running would be useless. These people moved faster than he ever could, and they knew the land far better than he did. The elder spoke again, the voice deep and commanding. The words were strange, but Ryan caught a rhythm in them, as if the elder was asking a question. When Ryan gave no answer, confusion rippled through the tribe. They muttered to one another, pointing at him, their expressions shifting from curiosity to hunger and back again. A younger member stepped forward, eyes wide with excitement. The youth touched Ryan's arm, then pulled back as though shocked. A murmur swept through the tribe. Some laughed nervously, others hissed warnings. To them, Ryan was not just a stranger. He was something from their legends, a figure from a past they barely remembered. The elder lifted a staff carved from dark wood and pointed it toward the village beyond the trees. At once, the tribe urged Ryan forward, guiding him with firm hands. He stumbled at first but did not resist. He knew he must learn who these people were if he hoped to survive. The path wound through the forest until it opened into a wide settlement. Huts made of woven branches and clay stood in circles, smoke curling from their roofs. Children stopped their play to stare, elders leaned on canes and whispered, and hunters returned from the fields carrying spears and nets. When they saw Ryan, silence fell over the entire village. Every face turned toward him. The elder spoke loudly now, raising the staff high. The tribe gathered close, forming another circle, larger this time, their voices rising in disbelief. Ryan realized they were not only surprised. They were astonished, even shocked, as though his very existence was impossible. At the center of the village stood a great stone carved with symbols. The elder led Ryan to stand before it. Strange patterns glowed faintly on the surface, and the tribe began chanting. The sound rose and fell like waves, echoing through the huts and across the fields. Ryan felt a chill. The way they looked at him was not just with wonder. There was hunger in their eyes, a hunger deeper than food. Some licked their lips, others clenched their jaws. He did not understand their language, but their faces told him enough. They saw him as more than a man. They saw him as something rare, perhaps even a prize. The chanting ended, and the elder lowered the staff. A long silence followed. Then, an argument broke out among the tribe. Some shouted angrily, their hands pointing at Ryan as if demanding something. Others shook their heads, gesturing with open palms, as though pleading for restraint. The crowd divided into two sides, voices clashing, spears lifted, fists shaken. Ryan's pulse quickened. He did not need words to guess what they were debating. Some of them wanted to keep him alive. Others wanted something far more dangerous. The tension grew until the elder struck the staff on the ground with a heavy thud. The sound echoed like thunder, silencing the tribe at once. The elder's gaze fixed on Ryan, sharp and unreadable. Then, with the motion of the hand, Ryan was pulled toward one of the huts at the edge of the village. Inside, the air was cooler. A fire burned in the center, and herbs hung from the ceiling. Two members of the tribe watched him carefully as he was made to sit near the fire. They spoke softly to each other, though Ryan could not understand. He looked at their faces, noticing how thin they were, how their eyes held both strength and exhaustion. It was then he began to understand. These people had lived in isolation for generations. Food was scarce, and survival had made them desperate. His arrival had stirred both memory and instinct within them. Hours passed. Outside, the village grew restless again, voices rising and falling as the argument continued. From the small opening in the hut, Ryan saw groups pointing at him, shaking their heads, or nodding eagerly. He realized his fate hung on their decision. He thought of escape, but he was deep within their village. Even if he ran, he would be hunted down in minutes. He needed another plan, something to change how they saw him. He thought of the small tools in his pack, of the skills he had learned through years of engineering. Perhaps he could show them he was not prey, but someone valuable. When night came, the guards by the hut's entrance grew tired. One dozed against the wall, while the other poked the fire lazily. Ryan reached into his pack and pulled out a small scanner, broken but still able to glow faintly. He tapped its side, and the screen lit with a pale light. The guards jumped, eyes wide, staring at the strange device. Ryan held it up, pointing to the glowing lines on the screen, then to the sky outside. He made slow gestures, trying to show them it could read the stars. The guards leaned closer, their suspicion turning into curiosity. One of them whispered to the other, then rushed outside. Soon the elder himself entered the hut, eyes narrowing at the light in Ryan's hand. Ryan bowed his head slightly, then pressed the scanner to the ground. The screen blinked, showing faint energy readings from beneath the soil. He tapped the ground, then the screen, then spread his hands wide, as if saying, "I can see things hidden, things you cannot." The elder studied him for a long time. Then the staff tapped once more on the floor, and the guards stepped back. The elder's face softened, just a little, as if beginning to doubt the voices that called for violence. That night, Ryan lay awake inside the hut. The village was quiet now, but he knew the debate was not over. Some wanted to use him for their survival in the most brutal way. Others began to wonder if his knowledge could bring something greater than a single meal. He closed his eyes, whispering to himself that he had to be careful. His life depended not only on his strength, but on proving his worth to these people. The tribe had gone 105 years without a man. Now one stood in their midst, and they were torn between two choices: destroy him, or follow him into a future they could not yet imagine. The night in the village stretched long for Ryan. He lay inside the hut, the firelight fading into faint embers. Outside, voices rose and fell, though he could not understand their words. Sometimes he heard anger, sometimes laughter, sometimes silence so heavy it pressed against his chest. He knew his fate still hung in their hands. Ryan's mind turned again and again to the looks in their eyes. Some had gazed at him with fear, some with wonder, but many had stared at him with hunger. He did not know what the final decision would be, and he could not risk waiting to find out. When the guards at the entrance grew weary, Ryan made his move. He shifted slowly, careful not to draw attention. He reached for the small piece of metal he had sharpened from the wreckage of his ship. The guard closest to the fire had begun to nod off, while the other rubbed tired eyes. Ryan waited until both were distracted, then slipped quietly through the gap at the side of the hut. Cool night air touched his skin. The sky above glittered with unfamiliar stars, and the forest loomed dark beyond the huts. He kept low, moving between shadows, his heart racing with each step. Every sound seemed too loud: the crunch of dry leaves, the rustle of grass, even his own breathing. But just as he neared the edge of the village, a sharp cry rang out. One of the guards had seen the movement. Drums began to pound, and the tribe stirred awake. Fires flared to life, and spears flashed in the torchlight. Ryan broke into a run, dashing toward the forest. Branches slapped against his arms as he pushed through the undergrowth. Behind him, footsteps thundered. The tribe was fast, far faster than he expected. They called out to one another, their voices closing in. Ryan's chest burned, but he forced himself onward. He leapt over roots, stumbled through vines, and finally burst into a small clearing. There, he stopped. Before him lay a young member of the tribe, collapsed against a tree. The figure's leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, and blood stained the ground. The youth looked up at him with wide amber eyes, full of both fear and pain. Ryan's first thought was to keep running. This was his chance to escape. But something inside him would not allow it. He remembered the faces of those who once doubted humans, the countless times he had been called weak, fragile, unworthy. If he left the youth to die, the tribe would never see him as more than prey. He knelt beside the wounded figure. The youth tried to push him away weakly, but Ryan raised his hands to show he meant no harm. He tore strips from his own clothing, binding the broken leg carefully. From his pack, he pulled a small vial of medicine he had saved for emergencies and poured a few drops onto the wound. The bleeding slowed, and the youth's breathing eased. By the time the hunters burst into the clearing, spears raised, they found not a runaway but a man kneeling beside one of their own, saving rather than harming. The scene froze them. For a moment, no one moved. Then the elder himself stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied the sight before him. Ryan did not rise or defend himself. He simply kept his hand pressed gently against the youth's leg, showing he was healing, not hurting. The elder lowered his staff slowly. A murmur spread among the hunters, soft and uncertain. They lifted the wounded youth carefully, glancing at Ryan with new eyes. Instead of binding his arms, they guided him back toward the village without striking him. Back in the settlement, the youth was placed near the central fire. Ryan was allowed to remain close, under watch but not chained. The tribe gathered around, whispering as they saw the bandages and the way the bleeding had stopped. Some still looked at him with hunger, but others now studied him with curiosity, as if wondering what else he could do. The elder spoke long into the night, his voice calm and measured. From the tone, Ryan guessed the elder was telling the story of what had happened, explaining that this strange human had shown mercy when he could have fled. The tribe listened, divided still, but less certain than before. Days passed. The youth slowly regained strength, limping but alive. Each time the bandages were changed, Ryan was brought forward to help. He showed them how to clean wounds with boiled water, how to use herbs in ways they had forgotten, how to keep infection away. The tribe watched closely, their suspicion softening with every small success. Children began to follow him at a distance, whispering and giggling when he turned his head. Hunters asked to see his tools, though they handled them with great caution. Elders sat nearby when he worked, nodding slowly as though memorizing every action. Still, not everyone was convinced. There were those who muttered angrily, their eyes lingering on him with distrust. They saw him as a threat to tradition, a stranger who could not be trusted. And deep down, Ryan knew he was not yet safe. The debate over his fate had not ended, it had only shifted. One evening, as the suns dipped low and the fields glowed with soft light, the elder came to him alone. The elder studied him for a long time, then tapped the staff against the ground. The meaning was clear even without words: you are different. You may stay, but only if you prove yourself useful. Ryan nodded slowly. He had no other choice. To survive, he had to become more than a prisoner. He had to show them he was worth more alive than dead. And so he set his mind to work. He looked at their broken tools, their worn nets, their simple huts. Ideas sparked in his mind: simple machines, stronger weapons, ways to gather food more easily. If he could give them even one small piece of lost knowledge, perhaps their view of him would change forever. But deep in his heart, he also knew this truth. One mistake, one wrong move, and their fear could return. One voice in the crowd could turn suspicion into anger again. That night, as he sat near the fire, Ryan stared at the stars above the village. Somewhere out there was the galaxy he had left behind, but here on this forgotten world, he was more alone than ever. He had escaped once, but true survival would depend not on running, but on trust. The tribe had begun to see him in a new light, yet shadows of doubt still lingered. His journey with them had only just begun. The days passed slowly, and Ryan's place in the tribe began to change. He was still watched carefully, but the constant threat of spears at his back had eased. People no longer glared at him with only hunger. Now they studied him with something new in their eyes: curiosity. The young one he had saved walked again, leaning on a carved stick. Whenever the tribe saw the youth moving through the village, whispers followed. They knew it was because of the strange human's hands. Some still doubted, but others had begun to wonder what more he could do. Ryan understood the chance before him. If he showed them only that he could heal, they might still one day turn against him. But if he proved he could help them live better, feed their children, and defend their homes, perhaps they would protect him instead of destroying him. He started small. When hunters returned with broken nets, he repaired them with knots stronger than before. When children tried to carry heavy jars of water, he cut wood into long poles and showed them how two people could share the weight. The people frowned at first, puzzled by his methods, but when they saw how much easier the tasks became, their frowns turned to quiet approval. One evening, Ryan sat by the fire with a group of hunters. Their spears lay across their laps, tips worn and chipped. He picked one up, ran his fingers along the dull edge, then looked around the camp for stones. Finding one flat and sharp, he showed them how to grind the spearhead carefully, shaping it into a sharper point. Sparks flew, and the hunters leaned closer, fascinated. When he handed the weapon back, its edge gleamed like new. The hunters tested it against wood and bark, nodding in surprise. For the first time, one of them touched his shoulder in respect. It was a small gesture, but to Ryan, it felt like a door opening. The elder watched all of this quietly. Each night the staff tapped on the ground as if marking the human's progress. Though the elder said nothing, Ryan sensed a silent test was unfolding. He was being weighed, his worth measured not in words but in deeds. Yet not all were pleased. Some whispered angrily in the shadows, saying the tribe did not need the tricks of a stranger. Others feared that his presence would anger the spirits of their ancestors. A few still looked at him with the same hunger as before, as if waiting for the day patience would end. Despite the unease, Ryan continued to share what he knew. He taught them to weave vines tighter for stronger baskets. He showed them how to shape clay into jars that could hold water longer. He explained how smoke from a fire could keep insects away from stored food. Each lesson was simple, but for a people who had lived in isolation for generations, they were treasures. The children were the first to fully accept him. They followed him around, wide-eyed, copying his actions, laughing when he showed them how to balance stones in towers or spin sticks to start a spark. Their joy softened even the hardest stares. Slowly, the tribe began to see not a threat, but a teacher. One afternoon, as he worked on a broken basket, a sudden alarm rang out through the village. Horns echoed from the watch posts, and people rushed toward the outer fields. Ryan followed, confusion tightening his chest. At the edge of the forest, he saw them figures from another clan. They were tall like the tribe, but their markings were darker, their eyes colder. They carried weapons sharper and newer, and their shouts carried anger. This was no friendly visit. The elder stood firm with staff in hand, while hunters raised their spears. The rival clan called out words Ryan could not understand, but the tone was clear: they were demanding something. Perhaps food, perhaps land, perhaps power. The tribe braced for battle, but Ryan could see the fear in their faces. Their spears were worn, their nets torn, their huts fragile. Against these stronger warriors, they had little chance. His heart pounded. He knew if this tribe fell, his own fate would fall with it. That night, when the rival clan retreated to the forest to prepare, the village sat in silence. Fear hung heavy in the air. Children clung to their mothers, hunters sharpened spears nervously, and the elders sat alone by the great stone, staff resting across the knees. Ryan's mind raced. He thought of the traps he had once built on distant colonies to keep away wild beasts. He thought of the machines he had repaired with nothing but scraps. If he could use what little the tribe had, maybe they could stand a chance. He approached the elder slowly, bowing his head in respect. Then he took a stick and drew shapes in the dirt, lines for walls, circles for fires, marks for traps. He pointed to the forest, then to the village, then to his drawings. He spoke slowly, repeating words, pointing to spears, to baskets, to fire. The elder's eyes narrowed, watching carefully, but did not interrupt. When Ryan finished, the elder tapped the staff once on the ground. The hunters stepped closer, studying the drawings with cautious eyes. Some frowned, others nodded, but one thing was clear: the tribe was willing to try. The next day, work began. Under Ryan's guidance, they dug shallow pits near the fields, covering them with grass and branches. They tied nets between trees, weighted with stones, ready to drop. They built fires at the edges of the clearing, with dry leaves that would create thick smoke. The tribe moved quickly, their fear sharpened into determination. Ryan worked beside them, sweating under the twin suns, his hands blistered, his body sore. Yet for the first time, he felt part of something larger than himself. They did not treat him as a prisoner now. They worked with him as if he belonged. By nightfall, the traps were set. The tribe gathered around the fire, spears in hand, eyes filled with both fear and hope. The elder stood and raised the staff high, speaking words that carried strength through the night. Though Ryan did not know the language, he understood the meaning. Tomorrow, they would fight for survival. As the tribe chanted, Ryan looked to the dark forest where the rival clan waited. His stomach twisted with dread, but his heart burned with resolve. He had shown them fire, tools, and healing. Now he would show them that humans were more than prey. The night before the battle was silent, but the silence was heavy, like the air before a storm. The tribe sat around the great fire, their faces lit by flickering light. Children huddled close to their mothers. Hunters sharpened their spears again and again. The elders sat still, eyes fixed on the flames, staff resting across the knees. Ryan sat nearby, his mind racing. He had seen battles before, but never one like this. On colonies across the stars, machines had done the fighting. Here, only spears, nets, and fire stood between life and destruction. He knew the rival clan was stronger, but he also knew strength alone did not win a fight. Cleverness could change everything. When the fire burned low, Ryan stood. Every eye turned to him. He picked up a stick and drew again in the dirt. He sketched the village, the forest, and the rival clan. Then he drew pits and nets, showing how they could trap their enemies. He made wide sweeping motions with his arms, pointing to the hunters, then the traps, then back to the fire. At first, the tribe only watched. Then the elder rose and placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. The staff tapped once on the ground, and the hunters leaned forward, studying the drawings. They began to speak to one another, pointing to the marks, nodding slowly. Ryan saw understanding spark in their eyes. The elder lifted the staff and spoke loudly, the words carrying across the circle. The tribe responded with a chant, voices rising together. For the first time, Ryan felt the rhythm of their unity. They were ready to listen, ready to try. The next morning, the village was alive with movement. Hunters dug pits deeper and lined them with sharp stakes. Women wove vines into tighter nets and hung them between the trees. Children carried stones to weight the nets, their small arms straining but determined. Ryan worked beside them, guiding with gestures and simple words he hoped they understood. He showed them how to angle the stakes so they would not break, how to tie knots so the nets would not slip, how to arrange the fires so the smoke would spread in the wind. Every detail mattered. The people began to see his mind as a weapon of its own. Where they had once looked at him with suspicion, they now came to him for guidance. Hunters brought their spears for him to sharpen. Women asked him to test the strength of their baskets. Even the children tugged at his sleeve, eager to help. By evening, the village had changed. What had been a place of fear now looked prepared. Pits lay hidden beneath grass, nets stretched high, fires weighted with dry leaves stacked beside them. Spears gleamed sharper than before, and the hunters stood taller, their fear replaced with focus. That night, the elder gathered everyone before the great stone. The staff was lifted high, and a chant filled the air. The tribe's voices rose together, not trembling with fear but steady with courage. Ryan stood among them, feeling the weight of their trust pressing against his chest. When the chant ended, the elder turned to Ryan. The staff tapped once, then pointed at him. The meaning was clear. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was their guide. Ryan bowed his head. He had not asked for this role, but it had come to him. If he failed, they would all fall. If he succeeded, they would live. The night grew darker. The fires burned low, but no one slept deeply. From the forest, faint sounds drifted: drums, shouts, the rival clan preparing. The attack would come with the rising suns. Ryan sat awake, sharpening a final spear. His hands moved steadily, though his heart beat fast. He thought of the colony he had left behind, of the endless stars, of the long silence he had carried within him since the crash. For the first time since landing, he did not feel alone. These people, though different, had begun to accept him. And he would not let them be destroyed. When the first light touched the horizon, the horns sounded. The rival clan appeared from the trees, their weapons gleaming, their voices loud. They marched with confidence, their eyes burning with hunger for conquest. The tribe stood ready. Hunters lined the paths, children hidden in huts, fires waiting for a spark. The elder raised the staff, and silence fell across the village. Ryan stood beside the elder, his eyes fixed on the enemy. The rival clan shouted again, demanding surrender. But no one moved. No one stepped back. The elder lowered the staff, and the hunters gripped their spears. Ryan's plan was ready. Every pit, every net, every fire waited for this moment. He whispered to himself, steadying his breath. This would be the test. Not just of his life, but of humanity's worth in the eyes of this tribe. The first light of dawn touched the horizon, casting long shadows across the village. The rival clan stepped into the clearing, their eyes sharp, muscles tense, and weapons ready. Their shouts echoed in the air, a warning that they meant to take everything by force. Ryan stood beside the elder, staff in hand, watching carefully. His heart raced, but his mind was calm. Every pit, every net, every smokestack had been placed with care. The rival clan believed the village would be easy to overrun, but they had not counted on human ingenuity. The first warrior advanced, confident and careless. As he stepped onto the grass near the hidden pit, the ground gave way beneath his feet. He stumbled, yelping in surprise as the hidden spikes caught his foot. Others rushed to help him, but the pits were lined across the path. One by one, warriors fell, caught in traps they could not see. The tribe watched, their fear melting into amazement. Hunters shouted instructions, guiding the traps to work together. Women threw stones and poured hot water from above, driving the rival clan back toward the forest edge. The children, safely hidden, whispered excitedly, pointing at the traps in awe. Ryan moved quickly from pit to pit, checking each one, adjusting a net here, a stake there. He directed the hunters to pull ropes at just the right moment, sending heavy nets crashing down on intruders. Smoke from the fires rolled across the field, making it difficult for the rival clan to see clearly. Their movements became slower, cautious, unsure. The elder raised his staff, signaling the hunters to advance. With Ryan's guidance, they pushed forward carefully, using their knowledge of the traps to surprise the enemy. Spears struck where the rival clan least expected. The invaders faltered, confusion spreading through their ranks. Ryan's mind raced, thinking ahead. He shouted instructions in simple words, pointing at lines of attack and retreat. The tribe followed him without hesitation. They moved as one, no longer separate individuals but a single unit guided by human strategy. One rival warrior managed to break free from a pit and ran toward a hut, intending to grab food or firewood. Ryan spotted him and yelled to the nearest hunters. Two leapt forward, blocking the path. The invader struggled but fell again, tripped by a hidden rope. He lay still, gasping, realizing that speed alone could not save him. The battle raged on. Pits, nets, and fires worked together like a single machine. Each time the rival clan tried to advance, they were slowed, trapped, or forced back. The tribe's confidence grew. Faces that had shown fear only hours ago now glowed with determination. They shouted, ran, and attacked with precision. Ryan noticed the rival clan leader trying to rally his warriors. He was tall, strong, and cunning, but even he could not see the traps laid out by the humans' careful planning. Ryan adjusted the nets, pulling them tighter so the next step the leader took would catch him completely. When the leader stepped forward, the ground beneath him gave way. He tumbled into a pit, losing his spear and falling among sharp stakes. The rival clan froze, shocked at the loss of their strongest warrior. The tribe surged forward, shouting, pushing the invaders back. By midday, the rival clan began to retreat. The traps, fires, and clever placement of hunters had turned what should have been a quick victory for the intruders into a humiliating defeat. They ran back toward the forest, leaving behind weapons, tools, and the belief that this village was no easy target. The tribe erupted in cheers. Children ran to the fields, laughing at the sight of the defeated invaders. Women hugged the hunters, smiling with relief. The elder stood tall, staff in hand, surveying the aftermath. He turned to Ryan, eyes wide with admiration. Without words, he tapped the staff on the ground once, a gesture of honor and respect. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. He was exhausted, his hands blistered and sore, but the sight of the tribe standing strong filled him with satisfaction. For the first time since he had crash-landed, he felt like he belonged. He had saved lives, not through strength alone, but through planning, skill, and trust. The tribe began gathering the wounded and counting their losses. There were few, but they had survived. Children ran to check on the hunters, bringing water and helping where they could. The youth Ryan had saved earlier limped toward him, smiling despite the dirt and sweat on his face. He held out a small bundle of herbs, a simple gift, but full of meaning. Ryan accepted it, nodding with gratitude. He looked around the village. The pits had been filled in, nets reset, and fires controlled. Every detail had worked. Every life had been protected. As night fell, the tribe sat around the fire once more. Their voices were full of excitement and relief. The children played nearby, mimicking the movements of hunters during the battle. The elders spoke quietly to one another, occasionally glancing at Ryan, as if acknowledging his role in their survival. Ryan felt a strange calm settle over him. He had faced fear, danger, and distrust, and he had overcome it all. He had shown the tribe that humans could be clever, brave, and resourceful. They had survived because of him, and in doing so, he had earned a place among them. The elder approached, staff tapping slowly on the ground. He spoke softly, words Ryan could not understand, but the meaning was clear. He gestured toward the stars, toward the future, and then toward Ryan himself. He bowed slightly, a sign of respect. Ryan nodded in return, understanding without words. The fire crackled and popped. Shadows danced across the faces of the tribe, showing both exhaustion and pride. The night air was cooler now, and a sense of peace had returned. The battle was over, the tribe was safe, and for the first time in 105 years, humans had walked among them not as prey, but as allies and leaders. Ryan leaned back, looking up at the stars above the village. Somewhere beyond the forests and mountains, the galaxy continued to spin, full of unknown worlds and distant suns. But for now, he was here. He had survived. He had taught. And he had changed the fate of this isolated tribe forever. In the quiet of the night, as the village slept, Ryan allowed himself one thought. This was only the beginning. If humans could survive here, adapt, and guide others, then perhaps there was hope not only for this world but for many more across the stars. The morning after the battle was calm and bright. The twin suns rose slowly, casting golden light across the village. Birds and strange creatures moved cautiously through the fields, sensing the change in the air. The tribe stood in the clearing, exhausted but alive. Ryan walked among them, observing the faces of the people he had saved. The hunters' eyes shone with pride, the women's faces were soft with relief, and even the children looked at him differently. They no longer saw him as a stranger. He was part of their world now, someone they could trust. The elder approached him, staff in hand. He gestured for Ryan to follow. Together, they walked to the great stone in the center of the village. Symbols carved into it reflected the sunlight, ancient markings that told the story of the tribe and the men who had once walked among them. The elder tapped the staff on the ground, then pointed toward Ryan. He spoke words that Ryan could not understand, but the meaning was clear. The tribe gathered around, standing silently, waiting. Then the elder raised his hand again and lowered it slowly. It was a gesture of respect, recognition, and acceptance. Ryan bowed slightly in return. The youth he had saved earlier limped forward. He held a small bundle of herbs, flowers, and a carved wooden charm. He handed it to Ryan with both hands. The gesture was simple, but it carried deep meaning. Ryan smiled and nodded. He placed the charm around his neck, feeling a sense of belonging he had never felt before. For the rest of the day, the tribe worked together to repair what the battle had damaged. Ryan moved among them, guiding without commanding, teaching without forcing. He showed them how to rebuild stronger huts, how to store water safely, and how to reinforce their traps in case of future attacks. The people listened carefully, absorbing every lesson. The children followed him wherever he went, laughing as he showed them simple games that also taught balance and focus. They learned quickly, copying his movements, and sometimes surprising him with clever solutions he had not thought of. Their energy filled the village, making the heavy work lighter and more joyful. Even the hunters, who had once looked at him with suspicion, came to trust his advice. They brought their spears to him for inspection, asked for guidance on positioning, and worked together under his direction. Each time they succeeded, their confidence grew. They no longer feared the unknown, they embraced it, guided by the human who had arrived from the stars. That night, the tribe gathered around the central fire once more. The sky above was dark and clear, filled with countless stars. Ryan stood beside the elder, observing the people who had once been ready to destroy him. Now they laughed, shared food, and told stories of the day's battle. The elder tapped the staff against the ground, a quiet signal that it was time for Ryan to speak. He stepped forward and used gestures and simple words to communicate. He thanked them for their courage, for trusting him, and for allowing him to teach them. He emphasized that they had survived not because of one person alone, but because of unity, intelligence, and courage. The tribe listened silently, their eyes wide. When he finished, the elder lifted the staff again, and the entire village echoed a sound that was half cheer, half chant. Ryan felt warmth rise in his chest. This was more than gratitude. It was acceptance. It was belonging. Over the next weeks, Ryan helped the tribe in many ways. He repaired tools, built small machines that made daily work easier, and showed the people ways to gather food and water more efficiently. He taught the hunters new methods of tracking and trapping, using both strength and cunning. He guided the women in creating stronger storage systems and cleaner cooking methods. As the days turned to weeks, the tribe grew stronger and more united. Fear of outsiders lessened, replaced by confidence. They began to plan for the future, discussing ways to expand their territory safely, improve their shelters, and protect their children. Ryan's presence had given them hope, and they began to dream of a life they had never imagined. One afternoon, the elder called a meeting in the central clearing. Everyone gathered, from the youngest children to the oldest hunters. The elder gestured toward Ryan, then to the tribe, and finally to the horizon. Though Ryan could not understand the words fully, he understood the meaning. He had been accepted not just as a guest, not just as a helper, but as part of their people. The tribe celebrated with a feast that evening. Fires burned, food was shared, and laughter filled the air. The children ran around, reenacting the battle with sticks and vines. The hunters told stories of their bravery, pointing at Ryan as the one who had helped guide them. Even the elder smiled, nodding with satisfaction. As the stars rose high in the night sky, Ryan stepped outside the village. He looked at the vast forests, the fields, and the mountains beyond. This world had been strange and dangerous when he first arrived. Now it felt like home. The tribe had changed because of him, and he had changed because of them. He thought of the long journey through the stars, the crash, the fear, and the near-death moments. He remembered the first day when every pair of eyes in the village had looked at him with suspicion or hunger. Now, he felt a deep connection to the people who had once seen him as a stranger. The elder appeared beside him, staff in hand. He gestured toward the village, then to Ryan, and finally to the stars above. The meaning was clear: humans and this tribe could survive together, learn from each other, and grow stronger. The bond formed in the fire of fear and danger had become unbreakable. Ryan smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility and pride. He knew challenges would come again, but now he had allies, trust, and a purpose. He was no longer just a man lost in the stars. He was a teacher, a guide, and a part of a people who had once lived 105 years without a man. The tribe had found a future. Ryan had found a home. And together, they would face whatever came next with courage, wisdom, and unity. The night settled over the village, calm and peaceful. Fires burned steadily, and the wind carried the scent of the forest. Somewhere in the distance, the stars shone brightly, as if blessing the new beginning. Ryan stood tall, knowing that the journey was not over, but that this moment, this village, and these people would always be a part of him. 105 years without a man had ended. A single human had arrived, faced fear and danger, and changed the destiny of an entire tribe. The world was no longer the same, and neither was he. Ryan turned back toward the fire, toward the tribe that had accepted him, and took his place among them. The future waited, bright and wide, full of hope, adventure, and life.